Inside Georgia Ballistics, you have guns, ammo, and Jon Waldman.
I opened the shop in March of 2021.
A business which is pandemic-proof.
I didn't want to get locked down anymore.
Gun sales have spiked since the pandemic, so has mass shootings.
The fact that it keeps being kids after kids after kids, that's the thing for me.
2023 on pace to be a record year.
There's not a way to cast a huge net. There's not a magical, and it's fixed. There's not. It's one of those where the community has to come together, both sides.
This Georgia gun dealer named Jon Waldman is closing shop up at his store. And the reason is the fact that he won't sell guns that may be used to target kids. So he's foregoing massive profits because he doesn't want to be a part of an industry that's killing children in mass shootings. Now let's take a look at some more from this story.
Waldman believes he's doing his part.
You never see it.
Until now, in Duluth, this might be a first in Georgia.
I just can't sell items like this to people.
Closing his gun shop.
And I'm not saying you shouldn't be armed. I'm just saying that I can't sell something that could be used.
Something like this.
This is an H car, chambered in 30-06.
It's legal if you pass the background check.
Just because you pass that doesn't mean you should have it.
As for what goes in it.
So these are armor-piercing 30-06 rounds, 500 of them. And you can get a gun that just, you put it in, rack it, and it doesn't stop until this is empty. The issue is that there's no training.
As a father?
What stops this from being used against my kid? And that's the problem I have. Because you never know the person getting it.
Now, Waldman explains in details here why he just can't continue to sell guns. Speaking to 11 Alive News, they reported that Waldman said he believes the key issue is the lack of training. He admitted too many children are getting their hands on guns, but described it as, I think we have a kid problem with guns rather than a gun problem with kids. He said there's not one clear answer to solve the problem we're seeing across the country. But I mean, I think this is a step in the right direction. If arms dealers are able to recognize that they do have a role to play in stopping gun crime, then that's a positive change. And like the story mentioned in the beginning, that gun sales are on the rise and have been rising since the pandemic. And he's choosing not to cash in massively as he could be right now, but to close shop out of concern with school shootings. Jackson, what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I think that, well, first and foremost, it's his right to make this decision to do that or not in the first place. So, I think if anybody raises a fuss about it, then it's incredibly political. While the irony of that being that somehow all of these shootings aren't political. If they raise a fuss about it, then it's political. But also, it's very important that culturally we push the lever. Because when it comes to legislation, it's going to be very hard to pass anything. Whatever the last bill was, I can't remember the name of it exactly. But in the bill that got passed under the Biden administration, we didn't even get the minimum age raised to 21. We didn't get anything significant with background checks. We didn't get anything significant with waiting periods. Because we got it passed, so be like, well, we already passed something, and so it didn't work. So what's the point of trying again? You look at Texas, who just passed a bill that basically requires every single public school in the state to have an armed guard there. I think that's 8,126 schools within 1,022 districts, if I can recall correctly. But they can't raise the minimum age to 21. Who continues to make money? Obviously, the gun manufacturers, the people like him who's shutting down his gun store. And obviously, no matter what the move is made, it's always the manufacturers of the guns who, we got to make sure that the dollars keep rolling in. But, before we can get to legislation passing or further legislation passing, we have to push the needle on the cultural side harder.
Yeah, absolutely. And it is really disturbing that Texas is going to fund to have armed guards in every single school when every single school doesn't have, algebra teachers. Every single school doesn't have literacy teachers, literacy instructors. They don't have social workers, but they can have an armed guard. And I remember a few months back, I covered a story with Dr. Ritchie on his show about an armed guard in a school who was teaching a class to students on gun safety when he shot a kid. He shot a kid in the school. So I don't think the solution to this is to have guns in every school, especially when we know that that's not an effective way to combat gun crime. I mean, it's sad, it's disturbing.
Yeah, a lot of resources. And again, for somebody who's committed public suicide as it is, that's not gonna stop them from running up in there. So, yeah.
Right, exactly.